Hey everyone, excited to pull this crew together. I think you're all on mute until I'm done talking, but
what up?
You're muted now. Oh, nice.
Hey,
Nate,
everyone.
you too.
Hello.
Hey Ben, hey Jimmy, hey James, hey Nate. Excited to pull this crazy on-chain crew together to do a little chat today. We see everyone in the DM saying GM, or in the chat saying GM, GM, on-chain gang, GMEC. Hello everyone, super excited to have you listening in with us. I'm gonna do a really quick intro here, and then we're gonna go around and talk about everyone's projects and just get into all the fun on-chain things. But feel free, if you have questions that come up as we go, just pop them in the chat and we'll see them live and we'll be able to answer some things live as well. To get things started, my fridge is going off after a while. I wanted to give a very, very brief normie explanation of a little bit about NFTs, how art is stored, just to set the tone for the rest of this conversation. When you are purchasing an NFT, I'm going to assume that everyone knows how to buy an NFT, or at least interested in it. Typically for art NFTs, you're intending to buy the art. The token is that you purchase proves the ownership of that art. But there are a lot of different ways that the art can be stored. Ways that are a lot less secure, which I'm sure a lot of people on this channel have run into and fall victim to in the past, and then ways that are a lot more secure. There's a common misconception just in general in Web3 that when you're buying an NFT, your NFT is stored on decentralized storage, and it's truly on the blockchain, when most in fact are it's not the case. So it becomes really important when you take on that risk, when the asset is not stored in a way that is safe. So like I said before, I'm sure that you guys on this call, and hopefully not a lot of you in the audience, but have come to own an NFT that the company has gone away and your image has gone away, thus making it feel totally worthless. So the ways, just like super brief overview, and then I'll let Ben get more into the technicals. There's the least secure way, which is storing it locally on your server. There are also ways that you can check this as well, so you can know what you're buying. But storing it locally on a server is obviously the least secure way. There's no backup image of this NFT on the blockchain. That's the way that many NFTs are stored. Many very valuable NFTs as well. Then there's the more secure way, which is going to be through IPFS, which is an open source way to store data in a decentralized manner. And then there's the most secure, which is on-chain, which is where all of this crew kind of comes in and what we're going to be talking about. So I'll let Ben kick it off with a little bit of a technical background for on-chain, and he'll probably talk a little bit about CyberBrokers as well. And then we'll go around to the rest of the crew to talk about how you guys have managed to put things on-chain yourselves.
Awesome. Thank you, Josie. Hey, everyone. I think we could probably take this. If anyone notices I'm looking down, by the way, my cat is just off screen, so showed up in the most opportune moment. I would love to hear, like, from Jimmy and James and Nate, their thoughts as well on the different spectrum of like on-chainness, because I know, like, in a really rudimentary sense, it goes from basically fully centralized, like stored on AWS, Vercel server somewhere, to being completely on-chain. And then even within on-chain, there's like different degrees in that as well. So like the way that for the collector, let's say the most practical way of thinking about it is, do you want your NFT to exist forever? And do you want it to be rendered directly on-chain? Then there are a few NFTs that actually do that, and that comes from the token URI call, which is what OpenSea and other marketplaces call, and they render whatever shows up there. But for a lot of practical purposes, whatever shows up in there can still appear to be centralized, even though the art itself could be fully on-chain. And I believe that's the case for Avastars. Jimmy can correct me. It is the case for CyberBrokers as well, where we refer to a cache of the information, but the entire NFT itself, all the art, everything is still on-chain. And that's just due to the limitations of what you can and can't do.
I have to look. We actually recently did a metadata update for Avastars, where we we deployed a new metadata contract and made it so the token URI is fully decentralized as well now. Just as a way
awesome.
to future-proof that even further. You could make a call against the contract before and look up this information on chain, but it wasn't streamlined in the way that modern NFT projects are. So we did update that on ours. But I think that was a big innovation that Uniswap made kind of in this journey, without like going too much on a tangent, was making it so not only could we store the data on chain, but this token URI field, which is a critical point for marketplaces or anybody to be able to easily see what it is that the token is often hosted, and being able to actually make it so that renders through the blockchain as well, kind of helps fully decentralize a lot of these on-chain tokens, so that, you know, literally, as long as the blockchain exists, that token URI will render, meaning, you know, you can follow that and find the information without having to dive deeply into the contract itself. Sorry.
No, that's
we
awesome.
did recently do that update. It was something important to us to get that done before we kind of take a step back from active development on the project. So.
I'm sorry, my cat is just now stirring. Clearly, this is a very provocative topic for the cat.
I agree, though. There's like this whole spectrum of, you know, on-chainness. We even saw Moonbirds try to take a stab at, you know, saying there's also this additional thing called in-chain, which I think we all kind of laughed at, because this wasn't a new thing, nor is it something we have to call something different. There are, though, on-chain is now taking on a whole spectrum. When a lot of us started to conceive these projects, this wasn't the case. Like, the idea of on-chain was laughable to many people, even though to us it felt like the common sense thing. And we saw very quickly when NFTs got somewhat popular and attention in the mainstream, one of the big memes, aside from right click and save, was like, you're like you're buying a reference on a database, like you're not, like, this stuff isn't on chain. And so instantly, like, all of us in this community that likes on chain were like, hold on a second, wait. I'm sure everybody had like 3 or 4 projects they wanted to tell those people about. And then, yeah, now there's all this nuance, like, was it generated on chain, which is something, you know, that's, I think, very near and dear to Nate and, you know, a lot of what we do. Not only like, is it stored on chain, but there was an algorithm on the chain that determined that. And we saw that, I think, first and foremost with the OG of OG on-chain projects is autoglyphs, you know, Larva Labs showing us, you know, the light, and you know, us following that light to where we are today. But that was an on-chain generated based on your token ID, or no, sorry, your wallet address and the block ID or something like that, if I'm not mistaken. And that helped determine the output of the autoglyphs that were minted that day. And I think that's like the pinnacle, right? Like, we could probably put that at the top of the spectrum of on-chainness. Nate or anybody else could chime in if we're wrong, and then we can kind of back down from there. So I kind of defer to Nate here in the technical aspects of this. So
yeah, I mean, so we had these discussions, you know, 2019, when we had nothing really better to talk about because our shit wasn't going up, and it was like, well, get tired of looking at the floor prices on CryptoKitties every day. But you know, we had the discussion about like levels of on-chainness, and I remember I made like a big document, and maybe like 3 of us read it and we're talking about it. But you know, we just were like, okay, well, if autoglyphs is sort of the standard, then what are the different levels? You know, IPFS wasn't even very popular at that point in time, so that was something that a lot of us, even at that time, kind of wrote off as being inferior. Although now I've taken a step back and thought, you know, it depends on what you're trying to achieve, if a solution is good or not. Like, it doesn't make sense to pay $1 million to put this highly detailed art on chain if it's only worth, you know, $100 on the back end. So it, you know, it really depends on what you're trying to achieve. But you know, with autoglyphs, I think, you know, the infrastructure at like the OpenSea and at the marketplace level didn't exist then, where you could just do a token URI and lay out the entire JSON and have it just work. Like, if you did that, it wouldn't work. And I remember I fought with OpenSea about this in late 2019, and they just didn't give a shit. And I'm like, well, you made it work for autoglyphs, so how do I do an NFT project without an API? And they're like, well, they're Larva Labs, they're the OGs, so we actually give a shit what they have to say. but
We
not
did get him
you.
to read we got him to read the metadata for Avastars. And
Yeah,
that's
but
how
there
we
was
uncovered issues, because there was the source of truth that was the metadata showing on OpenSea at the time. But we couldn't get them to do it with the image. They wouldn't take that step with the image at the time.
there's still the API, with token URI. Chainfaces the same thing. They honestly, it's not that we just didn't matter as much as Larva Labs. I mean, we still don't, I guess, but they did that for them, and then Uniswap came in and sort of pioneered the just writing the whole code into the token URI. So I know it's like some technical, like high level shit that probably doesn't make a lot of sense, but the basic idea with NFTs working on OpenSea before Uniswap and before sort of the token URI innovation, you had to write an API, which was just a link that had a bunch of text, and it would say the image is this file, and it would have a link to that file, and it would say the metadata is, I don't know, smile, and then it would be a crooked smile or whatever. And you would have to define all that stuff with text, and it would be a link to that. And that's the way NFTs worked by and large, almost exclusively until 2021. So even if you did an on-chain project pre that, you had to still supply that, even if you had functions on your contract that explicitly stored everything else, which is how like Chainfaces and Avastars worked. Avastars had metadata contract with the whole JSON generated at the contract level, but the infrastructure just wasn't there. It was too immature. And then you saw it with the Uniswap thing. So then now you are able to do that. You can write the whole thing in the contract in OpenSea. It'll just work, and it's just magic to most people. That just didn't exist then. I'm going way too deep in the technical weeds. So
Is that part of the criteria for like is that something, if someone's looking to make sure like the projects they're collecting, like they're ranking them on chainness? Would you agree that today any new project coming out should have that token URI decentralized completely for it to qualify, or you don't give a shit?
Qualify? Yeah, I mean, I think at this stage, if you have the tool to do it, you should probably use it. It's just we didn't in 2020.
Yeah.
Autoglyphs didn't either. If there was a new marketplace and they had a standard rule of you need to have a metadata output in the JSON the way that we expect it to work, Autoglyphs just wouldn't work, because it's a token URI to the link, or to the text characters, which just look like mess, and most.
Yeah, the image we see on OpenSea for Autoglyphs is
processed.
Artistic rendering of the actual token data that is on chain. It's not the accurate representation.
Yeah, and that's not to say it's bad or anything. It just is. It didn't exist then. There was sort of some behind the scenes stuff.
They could have done SVG, but I mean, it's all good. You could have done a lot of things differently if you had known where this was going to be 3 years later, 4 years later. It's insane though, like that we're even having this nuanced conversation. To me, at this point, like there was truly a point in time where I did not think that NFTs were going to be on chain and this huge opportunity was going to be missed. And now it feels like I don't even have to say anything about it anymore, because there's enough other people that think this is really important and are working on important things. And like I was telling everybody, Nate, before you got on the call and before all this started, like I recently went back and was like, hey, Nate, like I haven't collected any really on-chain projects lately outside of the ones I've been collecting for a long time now, including CyberBrokers. And I asked him what to go look for, and I picked up a couple of cool things, and it was neat to kind of go down that rabbit hole and see what's out there that I wasn't even aware of. That's like completely on chain and hardcore on chain. It's cool to see like this community grow and emerge, and like as time goes on, more and more people are expecting that things be on chain. I think we're trying to like define like this like of what on chain is, right? And I'd say like the top pinnacle was like the generative, everything's decentralized, but there can still be on chain that's not all the way that. And I think, where are some good examples of, where it's not completely on chain, it's still called on chain, and it still is within that canon? Like, are there some good obvious examples that come to mind? Would you put art blocks there?
I mean, so originally, like the spirit was, if you make the whole idea behind on chain is like how robust is this going to be to failure. So like, or that's how it always was for me. So like, if it's purely on Ethereum, there's 0 dependencies. That means that it will be around as long as Ethereum, like in theory, like it will be, you know, like squiggly WTF will be around in 1,000 years if Ethereum is still around. So to me, that was like the cool thing. That's what makes it awesome. You know, like a cave painting that can be rediscovered thousands of years from now, versus anything with an API. Although the reality is as long as OpenSea doesn't go under, they're caching all these images, so they're not going to realistically go offline.
I think we need someone other than OpenSea to be the savior here. I hate to say it.
Sure, or Blur, it doesn't matter. Like, the thing is, there'll always be a marketplace as long as NFTs are around.
I think this is why Unchained is important, is because we don't have to rely on any of these fucking marketplaces if this stuff is sufficiently decentralized.
That's the fun idea.
And look and use it. That's the power of these NFTs as a standard in general, right? Like, if you like can talk to the blockchain and plug in these Web3 components, and you can display and sell these NFTs on a marketplace, which kind of, sorry, I don't want to derail this too much, but I wrote something down because I have ADD and I try like not to interrupt, but I'm not very good at that. How do we solve royalties with on-chain? Like, it feels like a missing piece here that, like, complete, and whether or not royalties are supposed to be around or not, like, is that not the part that like we kind of missed on here? Like, maybe all of us, and like what's important that's on chain. Yeah, we got the art on chain, fucking really important. We've got the metadata there, but we don't have royalties on there. And like, is that something that could have been solved? Maybe Ben, like, you know, maybe Nate has some thoughts here. Maybe Ben, maybe Jason. I don't know. Like, it seems like this is the big miss that all of us kind of really missed. We thought, like, I made some assumptions about like social pressure to enforce royalties. You know, others may have made some other assumptions. Whether or not
isn't one of the problems though that code is law? You know, so you're limited by what the blockchain itself allows, and therefore you end up having to like, basically you're kind of like
it doesn't have to be like mandatory, but it could be referenced on chain. I mean, there's a lot of different like layers here, right? We were talking about like how on chain something is, and like I think what you're talking about there, Jason, is like full spectrum royalties are enforced somehow at the contract level, right?
James.
Crashblossom.
I just realized I need to turn my light on as well. I'm sitting in the dark.
Yeah, you're on vampire.
Well, no, I mean,
in the dark you're Jason, in the light you're James.
We need to make an NFT of this guy's like on chain.
No, yeah, I mean, I think, you know, from what I've heard anyway, it seems like one of the most sort of obvious and kind of brutal options is, you know, is to just block marketplace contracts, right? To just say like, you know, these can only be traded here, right?
I say you do an allow list, everything's blocked, and then you allow them.
No.
It's not ideal.
That's an on-chain solution, though. I mean, that's a.
It is, but it's not a permissionless one, right? Like the problem that we have right now with royalties not being enforced, like there are standards that do allow for NFT royalties. 2981 is a popular one, and I felt that was enough. It's not, because it doesn't completely. It's not a requirement. It's a suggestion. There's still a social contract to implement it. So kind of the same way with when we talk about the token URI now being more adaptable because OpenSea thought it would be more adaptable, we didn't make any changes. Like, nothing could have changed in the way we could have written our contracts. Just the centralized marketplace that we all needed decided that it was worth their time to do it. So if it is a requirement that royalties have to be on chain because nobody in this industry has a backbone to actually enforce the social contract.
It seems to be the excuse is that it's not on chain. So why are we even having the conversation about it?
You can enforce it, but you have to break the existing standard and move away from that and write a new standard that includes all these complexities. And unfortunately, that means everything's going to be more expensive to run the transaction. So you can't future-proof everything.
Limit Break's trying to do, right? The what's it called? I don't know the name of his project right now. Gabe, Super Bowl guy. they have like 721C, I think, and they're trying to build in a bunch of mechanisms and do a new standard and suggest migrating to a new standard.
It's all centralized shit though, man. Like,
I'm generally against their solution as well. There's a lot of other stuff that allows them to set, the project can set a floor price that is on an object and say how much. Like, there's a lot of stuff. I commend what they're trying to do. That's like one of the things too. Like, I want to like applaud everybody who's trying to find solutions here. This is not an easy problem to solve, obviously. And I think that's like where I'm saying, like, we didn't have our eyes on the ball here necessarily. We thought like what Manifold did with that non-mandatory but on-chain like contract allowed people to go and look and see what the royalty is and then to respect it. And I don't want to devolve too much from this. I was just curious if anybody, I guess like the allow list is one option. I didn't know if anybody had thought of anything really cool with on-chain and royalty. So I
think SudoSwap, Oxmon, Owen at SudoSwap, he's got some interesting ideas about it. That
Owen at SudoSwap's kind of the guy who screwed this whole pooch to begin with by launching a marketplace without respecting the royalty.
But they're now pivoting, I think, and they want to basically honor whatever the creator decides to.
The problem with his solution was it required you to set up a pool on SudoSwap or whatever, right? And so what's to stop other marketplaces from doing the same and requiring this pool? And all of a sudden you need all this capital in order to have your royalties enforced. So I appreciate that. Like I said, I hope they have really switched gears, because that I've dogged SudoSwap since the beginning. It was a dangerous, this is in any new nascent space, it's really dangerous when ideas get out there into the wild and actually are in production. Just like when things weren't on chain initially, and then you have a marketplace that doesn't respect royalties. In my opinion, I've never talked to the guy. I just figured they got lazy and didn't want to like build in the mechanism and support that optional.
I think he built it originally for his own collection, actually.
Yeah. All right.
But I think philosophically, he did.
But then you see that can be done, and then someone else is like, "Oh shit, we can just like not respect royalties," and then it's a slippery slope we go down with a lot of different things here. So
yeah.
Anyways, I'm glad to hear that they're potentially working on some solutions to aid, because contrary to what a lot of people want to say, royalties are a controversial subject. However, they are part of the magic of Web3, this creator space. And like, we need to figure it out. We can't just ignore it and say, well, that was fun for a couple of years. There's a reason that that's part of the magic that we have to like get back. And I hope that like there's really smart people working on-chain shit. And I hope that some of them do take some time to consider like, how do we protect creators as well with these on-chain powers, on-chain superpowers that we in our NFTs have? So maybe we can move on to something else. I could talk about this for fucking 5 hours.
I could too. I'm going to get myself kicked off the stream because I'm probably the only anti royalties creator, because I just think that it was always inevitably going to go to zero. Like, I remember we even argued about this shit years ago. And, the thing is like, people will always pay less if they can. And you kind of put it in my head that, well, people will do it because it's the right thing to do, and they'll get blasted if they don't. And that's true. When there were only 150 or 200 people in the space trading, if you tried to skimp on royalties, the artist would message you and be like, hey, you didn't pay me my 0.1 ETH.
I still do that. I still do that.
You still do. So, I think it's fine if you want to chase it down. I think it's fine if you want to try to enforce them. It just is impossible. It's a losing game. There will always be a marketplace that undercuts them, and there will always be people that use it. The only reason OpenSea even kept its market share is because it was easy and it was what people knew how to use. The same reason everybody, largely, if they started earlier, still uses MetaMask, even though there are a lot of other options now. But the next group will come in and they will use Blur probably because it's easier to use. And they're not going to pay royalties. And that is just, I know that there is some enforced royalties there. And there is the idea of like.
Sorry, man. So I just say, no, just one thing, which I think sometimes Americans don't know is in Europe, we have droit de suite, which is like, it's actually in law. And there are ways around it. But and you have it in California as well, right? California is the only US.
It's very limited, but every EU nation I've looked into on at least the western side of the EU, which I've looked into all of them, all had a creator royalty law in place that at least respected the royalty on the first couple sales It was often limited in the amount, but it is literally the law of the land in a lot of countries that are not the United States. So
saying, yeah, so it's, I mean, there may be, there may be a point in the future where maybe
the U.S. has been extremely unfair. The U.S. actually shot down the federal government shot down that stronger creator right in California, I believe, and have actually leveled it back to what the federal mandate is. So it's pretty weak in the U.S. right now, and a lot of these companies are probably U.S. based, but still, nonetheless, the requirement to allow that royalty does exist in these other countries, and that's why the optional one is probably still in place at the moment. But yeah, I'm really glad you brought that up, James, because it's one point that I harp on a lot, is that at some point, if we can't do this and solve this on chain, then it will be solved in like on a legal basis and a contract basis, and that is ultimately the solution. I mean, maybe that's where all this goes anyways, but
that's going to be kind of rough,
like the code law approach, at least for.
I mean, that's pointless to me. You just go back to the old shit. Like, there's no point in having this like LARPing as decentralized where I can buy stuff and trade it and sell it the way I want to if I've got to listen to the law that you guys want to create. Like, I really think that is against the spirit.
I'm saying, like, if there's
no decentralized way to do it, though.
It goes against self-custody, basically, right?
It's the only way to do it is some centralized platform that you have to go through. You let it own your assets and it makes sure that the royalties get paid. Because even
some crazy social score where we rate wallets based on it.
And most people, so what would happen is there would be good upstanding citizens like Jimmy who will pay his royalties every time, and there will be people who never pay them because they've already hurt their social score. So it's not a credit score. Like, if you've already missed the payment once, just miss it a million times. Who gives a fuck? Like, your score is shit anyways. So that would always happen. There was
artist doesn't sell you something because you don't pay your royalties, and that could all be tracked on chain. I mean,
then you just use an anonymous account and buy it. There's so many ways around.
You have no social score.
Okay, then you use that. You buy some cheap NFTs. You sell them. You get a good social score.
It's still going to be a way to game it.
Any scenario you came up with, it would be easy to always just cheat it, and that's exactly what happens in crypto. You always come up with like,
so that's
individual accounts, one per account. Dude,
but most people follow the rules. So what about like that idea that like you can follow the rules?
It doesn't matter because everybody doesn't. That's what I'm saying. It doesn't matter because unless everybody follows the rules, it just doesn't fucking matter.
But I like Josie's idea of social scoring because you can do that on chain as well.
Yeah, we already have a social score. No one's just complicated.
And then people will just cheat the social scores.
No, I'm not saying that.
Okay.
And then it's Black Mirror episode. I mean, it's
a fun idea. Yeah. No, Nate, do I want royalties 100%? It's a lot of the reasons why I came to this space. It's a ton of the reason why in the very beginning, I mean, why I never launched anything on Super Rare, why I wanted my own contract and I sold everything, on my own contract through OpenSea and never went on an art platform for years. Like, it was a ton of like that ethos of the reason why I came to this space. And it's been sad to see it go away, but I'm also maybe I should be more creative and think of ways, but I feel like I'm being pretty realistic and know that a lot of those things are going to zero. So it's like, what's the next thing we can do? What's coming after that? So I don't know.
It might not be totally lost. Funny enough, I was talking to Alex Atala, CTO co-founder of OpenSea a while back when this first started happening. There's an EIP 1155 or 1153 that allows for transient storage that may actually allow you to know whether or not a royalty has been paid in the transaction. So you could do theoretically, some checks to make sure that a minimum royalty is being paid. But if we have to revert to like a social contract or the law of the land, then I don't think it's going to be a centralized exchange. I think it's going to be KYC. Imagine going to OpenSea and having to give them your driver's license or your passport just to use the website, and then you have to pay the creative fees based in where you're from.
Ben, do you mean to say that you can tell if a royalty is being paid before the transaction occurs? Because I mean,
before
after,
it finishes, so we could revert in the middle of
before
the
it finishes.
transaction.
Right,
Yeah.
right.
Now, this is an EIP that is still in the last call. It doesn't. It looks like it's going to go through, but it's not yet official. But it might be a way to do it in the future. Not now.
So what if you just transferred it and did an OTC? I mean, there's always the way to get
That's
around
the
it.
way around it, right?
There's
And I mean,
always a way around any scenario
Yeah.
that you can come
Yeah,
up
but
with.
that's okay.
but-
Like the same thing with like, there's a way to rob a bank if you really put your mind to it, mate. You know? Like,
No, it's
Yeah.
not the same, dude. Robbing a
is.
bank
No,
is
no, no,
hard, and the
I
risk
think
is
it's okay.
high.
I
OTC takes one middle person that you both sort of trust. They escrow it. It's super
Dude, all you
easy
gotta
to
do
do.
to
Yeah, but
fence
I
trust
think
is
that
violated
people-
so much in the space.
Oh, go
I
ahead.
don't. I think OTC is not, because most people don't have that friend that they trust with like their NFT, so that's not going to happen. I don't think. I think the majority of people still have to go through marketplace. You will have the biggest sales will probably still happen OTC, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
there
will
will still.
bypass it.
It's too much friction. Think about even Coinbase. You can click one button when you're making a sale on your crypto to go to Coinbase Pro and pay like half the fees. But because it looks intimidating and people don't know what the market and limit orders are, they would just never do it.
Oh yeah, I got Coinbase One. I pay like $20 a month for no trading fees.
Scam. That's a huge scam.
Wow.
They front run your.
I know, dude. I looked it up last time, and it was like they were gonna literally
don't-
take like an extra $250K out of my trade.
Okay. Do you guys have a closing comment on this? Because I do want to transition and I want to ask James about his
I'm done. I've said my piece. Sorry for bringing it up.
No,
Yeah.
I love it. It's good. We have some interesting chats that came through the YouTube anyways. So
Yeah,
anyways,
let's move on.
James, would you be down to talk a bit about your art, why you even got interested in creating on-chain art, and maybe show us some things if you have your
Oh
screen?
yeah, sure, yeah. So I came in a bit later than most of you guys, obviously, and at the time it was when the market was already going crazy, and I sort of gravitated more towards crypto art. I was sort of going around voxel spaces and found like all these old museums and stuff, and so was just looking around there. I kind of got I got kind of red pilled, I guess, just looking at what was happening there, and that there was a genuine movement there. And I when I was in my teens, I was quite lucky to sort of catch wind of everything that was happening in the web and the internet, and got quite heavily involved in. And the culture is very similar like now to what it was like then. And my parents are hippies and stuff, so I just sort of found a way with the technology and art and all that stuff that which I see here again. And obviously with that stuff, with the web, that original culture kind of got deleted, right, pretty much, and replaced by Google and Facebook and so on. So I think the promise of like decentralized media is yet to be fulfilled, and blockchain can obviously play like a really big role in that. And so I started making art that was kind of around technology and people and stuff, and then in 22, kind of in the middle of the beginning of the bear market, released a dynamic series called Burner, where the artworks react to Ethereum gas price data. So they become more intense the more activity there is on Ethereum, and they just keep changing. So there's a sort of impermanence about them. It's like there's this constant flow of information that we have in our lives, and these things do the same thing, as they just keep changing. They're there. There's a composition and a kind of a form, and then it's gone. And that was what the JavaScript we put on chain, but we were running an API to get the gas data and stuff. But I started looking at on chain stuff, and then made some ordinals as well, dynamic ordinals, and then made this series Gold, which I'll show you. I'll share my screen, actually. You can see a couple of the pieces. So can you see that?
Yeah, we can see your. Oh, great. The.
Oh, okay, cool.
There we go.
And so gold is completely on chain. So it's made out of SVGs, which is stored on Ethereum, and this artwork that you're looking at now is delivered directly from the Ethereum blockchain to the screen. So there's there's nothing in between. It's not cached. There's no proxy version of it on a server or anything like that. It's literally just comes straight from Ethereum. And gold, these artworks, they listen to the collection, so the gold collection, they listen to the collection's own market activity. So if there's a sale, the pieces will all change in unison. If there's a transfer, the pieces will change. If the sale, if the seller paid a royalty, that would be different from if the seller didn't pay a royalty. You'll see something different for a short period of time. And so the series is called Gold, and they're kind of like self-aware artworks. Like they basically the contract knows what's happening in the collection, in the market, and then the artworks will change as a result. And we're actually coming up to a kind of milestone in the collection. 6-month milestone will be 21st of December, and at that time, people who've held their artworks in the same wallet for that 6-month period will be able to claim new art elements for the compositions. They'll be able to claim new art, basically, which then gets added to the artwork again. And it was sort of, it came about because, I mean, it's just this sort of idea of NFTs and the market for art and how that changes our sort of perception of an artwork. So in this case, they actually, the artworks literally change according to what's happening in the market. And yeah, I mean, these SVGs, the way the composition is put together, it's a kind of a little bit like a sort of abstract visualization of maybe a market structure of some kind. And there's lots of different ones. There's like, this is a different one with different color scheme, and there's some of the image elements are like kind of arrows, and you get kind of bell curves, and there's like candlesticks from charts kind of go in there, but you basically just have these very strange kind of like amorphous constructs. And I was thinking actually about how we all use, when we're doing on-chain art, we all use SVGs, and it's a kind of like, it's quite a flat aesthetic, it's like quite a thin aesthetic, but it's also quite kind of classy as well. But it's interesting to see what different people do with that, with those limitations, because obviously you're limited by by how much of the kind of weight of the image files that you're putting on chain and stuff like that. But yeah, this was quite a fun project to do, and definitely I learned a lot, because I'm not a developer myself. I
was going to ask, did you learn code for art or art for code?
No, I mean, I kind of tinker at the edges of the code, like I work with great devs who will then, they tell me which bits of code I'm allowed to mess around with, basically. But it's very much like, it's a very kind of iterative process, and there's a lot of like pushing back and forth and trying to find what's possible. And with Gold, we kind of got, we had some help from some guys, including the dude who's from Intart, who did the Metro, Chain Left, Token Fox, who's running a brilliant on-chain checker service. So I had them also as a sort of brain trust. And so we were able to kind of learn a bit about techniques that they were using to compose the animation URI on chain, and to basically, to kind of build the artwork straight off Ethereum and deliver it straight to the viewer. And but there were many cases in which like we were looking at stuff, because these obviously, in order to get all of that live data, they're connected to Ethereum nodes. They're listening to Ethereum nodes. And you can change the Ethereum node that it's getting the data from at any time by pressing G. And so, which is quite decentralized, right? Because it's like, it's sort of like the ideal of decentralization is kind of, there's a certain element of DIY, right? So we give people that option. And but there were definitely a lot of times when we were hitting brick walls and kind of going, okay, well, can we look at something else where they've done something similar to this before, and we can kind of, borrow that idea or whatever. And there wasn't one, so we just had to invent it. And there were some things that we couldn't do as well, obviously. Like, there were a bunch of things that would have been nice to do, but were limited by what's possible on chain, because we didn't want to use, say, OpenSea's API or whatever, right? And obviously we want to make sure that the artworks are kind of viewable on marketplaces and so on and so forth, but not be beholden to any marketplace as well.
But this is actually, thank you for sharing that. And
my pleasure.
All the dynamic NFTs.
Han, you guys know Han? He's doing something. He's working on something right now that's like different. Someone asked the question, like, where are NFTs going next? I don't have all the details. I was wondering if any of you guys had talked to him recently. I can kind of lay out the 10-second what I think he's doing.
Lay it out.
He's doing something where Hans, all the stuff he's done has basically also been very on-chain. He did the crypto cubes. I don't know if those were initially on-chain, but I know they definitely are now. And then he did some algorithms, I think, on or some other project on art blocks, and he's done a couple other really cool things. Anyways, he kind of keeps me in the loop occasionally what's going on, and I think what he's working on right now is it's the entire NFT is the smart contract. It's like one NFT, and it has functionality in it. It's dynamic. I don't recall exactly what it was. And I asked him about how, because it's not an ERC 721, it's not a traditional NFT. And I asked him how he was going to go about making sure that it could be like displayed and traded and things like that. And I think he said something about like a sister token that's somehow going to be associated potentially and will make it visible on marketplaces and perhaps have some tradability. I don't recall exactly. But I thought it was really interesting because someone did ask in the audience, like, where's this going next? And the idea that like you're outside of a standard, which doesn't really work for the long term if you want these things to be easily like discoverable and stuff, but we're also still forging new grounds. And sometimes it's necessary to go outside of, I'd say it's necessary to go outside of the mold a lot. But he's creating something new that is just a smart contract and probably has a bunch of cool stuff that he can do because he's not like just conforming to whatever an NFT is and even worrying about what that is. I think he's making this for the sake of like on-chain art and expression. I'm sorry I don't have more information on it. I'm not even sure if he's said too much about it all publicly, but I think that's one example of like how this is evolving potentially. It's possible we see new standards emerge around a lot of these topics we were discussing today. We'll pull that rabbit back out of the hat. But I think that's one cool thing. I'm sure there's a bunch of other cool stuff that I'm not even aware of.
Yeah, Ben, I don't know if you want to share the question actually that Raul, sorry, not sure how you pronounce your name. He said, where is this going? Not just blockchains are not just databases, new mediums for making art, building games, telling stories, etc. And as soon as I saw building games, I was just thinking if you maybe have any fun ideas about what's happened on chain, not just in the way of art for games, and then where you think it could possibly go as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And we're definitely going to want to get Nate's opinion on this too, because I have 2 very dead NFTs thanks to Nate's own project. Um, there is so much you can do with on-chain moving forward. I mean, putting the metadata of a piece of art on-chain can go pretty far. Making it dynamic can go pretty far. Making them interactable with each other can go pretty far. Having them react to changes in the state of other NFTs in the ecosystem can go very far. Storing the metadata of things, like if you have loot, for example, and you know what, and that metadata is on chain, then you can create other NFTs based off of like loot, for example. Like there are so many ways that you can extrapolate this outward. One thing that I really, really wish, and I don't know if things have changed in the last year or so, but we have all the pieces to be able to put a full game on chain, like an HTML5, like WebGL, CGS game, whatever. The only difference is I don't think OpenSea allows you to. So they let you display an SVG directly from the token URI. They don't let you do HTML directly from the token URI yet, or at least they didn't last year. And
They do now.
I don't know, but they let you put a link. Like this is always the thing. They're like, you can put a link to it, but you can't put the actual thing there. So you can put a link to it, and you can have like your game, like an iframe rendered. Like a bunch. I think all of us probably have an NFT, at least one. That's just an iframe rendered in the displayer on OpenSea. But if you want to do the exact same thing, just having the HTML directly in there instead of a link to it, it doesn't work. And I know that the concern had to do with content security,
Viruses
like
and stuff like that.
headers. Yeah, something like that. And that bothers me because I can't figure out what is fundamentally different between that and a URL to the item that you just display. Like, anyway, but if we can get around that extremely tiny hurdle, then there's absolutely no reason why you can't have technically any kind of content that you want to be associated with NFT and have it be completely on chain. Like, for example, you could make a game. Like, let's say you had a little socket-based game where you had little pixel characters moving around, and you stored the pixel characters in all the different contexts on chain, and your little game just like went out and like talked to the contract, did like a little you know Web3 ethers call, pulled in the information from those contracts, got the pixel characters, or maybe even just call the contracts directly. And then you just go ahead and you play your game, like right in OpenSea. I don't really think of OpenSea as being the best place to play a video game, but you know, the technical thing has always been, can you do it? Okay, let's do it. Not whether or not it's a good idea to do it. I think one thing that we should really look for is, and I believe there are people working on this, and I don't know the status of them. I really want like a decentralized file viewer basically for on-chain content for the contracts. Like I don't want OpenSea to be the place that I have to go to look at extremely dynamic new content. What I would love a standard where we could just plug in like, hey, pull this contract call, do this rendering effect, and then display whatever is on there. Let us play it, like something that's native to that. Because, and this will be my last bit before I would love to pass it on to Nate because I really want to hear what he has to say. I personally, in this, I know we talk a lot about how your NFT metadata being stored on like AWS, centralized server, is a danger because eventually it will go away. A greater danger right now is just OpenSea thinking, okay, well, I have to take your contract down, or this token violates this suit we got, and you have to take it down because the token name has this one word in it that shouldn't be in there, even though, you know what I mean? Like really stupid things. So, but yeah, Nate, you actually made a game with characters on chain. I think you ran it at least twice, right?
So, yeah. So first off, I want to say, regarding like dynamic NFT art, I think that it's like the coolest, most underexplored kind of NFT space. Like James, when he was Crashblossom, in his past life, and he made burners. And I remember like, not that that was the first example of like dynamic art that depended on stuff happening on chain, because Chainfaces Arena was also that. And there's other projects that have done similar things, terraforms. I can't. Whenever I put myself on the spot, it gets harder to come up with an entropy. That there are other ones, but the thing is like that to me is what kind of is cool that hasn't really been pushed out. Like the most boring to me kind of projects are, and not that they were boring 2 years ago, but that where we are now, like, is putting an adjective animal on a token, and then all you do is play hot potato on OpenSea. Like, I think that's fucking dumb, and it's great that it worked in 2021 and there was money to be made then, but that will never really work again at that scale, I don't think. Like, an average person they see no value in that, and they never will, and that's fine. But like, there is kind of an art revolution happening here, and if you leverage the tools here, which is you have this, you can code the art and you can make it live forever using the blockchain, and nobody's really doing that because it's harder and you have to be more creative to do that. Versus, I mean this all goes back even like early day on chain art, when Jim was, he was asking a developer about it, and the guy's telling him like, why would you do that? Nobody does that, and that's dumb, and it's a waste of money. And he's like, I don't care.
Oh, and you're also like disgracing the blockchain by like storing the images on the
people
server.
still say that shit today, and it's like the reason you do it is because you can fucking do it. Like, it's about like, to me, like, Chainfaces Arena.
It's better, and yes, the ability to do it exists.
Yeah, I mean, the reason is like, that's the whole fucking point. Like, I can go in a gallery and I can hang up pictures of Bored Apes, and that's it. Like, that's what it already is. There's nothing special. Not against any. There probably aren't many Bored Ape viewers in here, anyways. But there's nothing really unique or special about that. All they've used the blockchain for is a way to basically sell marked up tokens, a way to do the distribution trustlessly, which is fine, is cool. But like, I was bored of that shit 4 or 5 years ago. To me, it always mattered that there was a deeper there we go, a deeper layer where you actually are using the blockchain in a unique and creative way. Like, that's how you're going to build and see art pieces that actually matter in 10 years or in 100 years or whatever.
Also, you can't with the dynamic art, and especially on chain stuff, obviously, but with dynamic art, you can't right click save it, right? It has to be there. It's made for the blockchain. It has to be connected
exactly.
to it. Not, it can't just be, saved and sort of whatever.
Because it's a piece of code, and that's what's cool about it. Like, I think, again, just to Chainfaces Arena, like, one of the ideas behind it was, okay, well, you're in this arena game and you can die, and if you die, you don't get your NFT back. So that's already kind of novel. The idea that the further you survive in the arena, the more scars you earn. So it's sort of a visual indicator of how brave you were and how long you lasted in there, because you don't want to die and lose your NFT, because there's also a monetary value, associated with that. The longer you lived, the more proportional amount of the treasury that you were entitled to, because you were a good warrior or whatever. And all that shit was programmed on chain. And if I died the second that it was released, it didn't matter, because it was going to happen one way or another. Millions of dollars were going to get paid out. The faces were going to get scars. Some people's shit was going to die. And that was always what was going to happen. And it didn't need me. And it never, after it started, it never did. And I think like that's what's really cool about this dynamic on-chain art. Like, I think it's like it's a movement that hasn't happened yet, but when it does, people will be like, oh, this is the point. Or that's the way that I look at it. Maybe I'll be wrong, and everything that I bought this season that relates to that will be wrong. But that's what's so cool about it to me, is it actually is a unique angle that is just super underexplored. Regarding, so you can put, we talked about SVG, or it was brought up earlier, like, why do we use SVG? It's because that was what worked at the time. Now you can go deeper. You can use Canvas. You can just put HTML in, and it does actually work now, Ben. I remember when it didn't work, but I'm pretty confident that I've done it on testnet and tried out HTML links. And the thing is nobody does that.
Nice because it's like really elegant, clean code, and it scales infinitely. So you could put like, a CyberBroker on like the biggest building in New York City, and it would look fucking incredible. You can't really do that with a rastered image. So that's why SVG, I think, also, in addition to being like lighter weight on chain also like just looks good and it scales. So that's one reason why.
You can do it with HTML as well. You can do it with Canvas. You can make the canvas whatever size you want.
But
with
you're also
SVG,
rendering SVG code then, aren't you? Like the HTML.
not necessarily.
Use...
Not necessarily. So,
Okay.
I mean, sometimes.
Vector versus vector.
Okay, yeah, CSS, I guess you can draw a little bit, you know.
Yeah.
By the way, OpenFox did say Nate's right. OpenSea supports HTML from on-chain. He also did bring up, he said Crypto Coasters did the exact thing and bundled a full 3D experience on-chain. Although there's no game, it's a fully on-chain 3D experience, which is really cool. And I'm going to check that out too. I also do want to bring up the topic just because I know it's hasn't come up yet, but it is an important topic about how expensive it is to put some things on chain. And like as interesting and fun as we can get with some of these concepts, there's always going to be the cost of putting things on chain. Does anybody want to chat about that?
Yeah, I mean, the costs, that is part of the balancing act, I think, that you always have to weigh as a creator. How important is it? So, you know, CyberBrokers being extremely detailed. And when I was looking through some of the files, I was like, oh my God, this is going to cost them so much. Because I was thinking I was kind of thinking the way that I would do it. And you guys had a clever implementation that saved you the large percentage compared to what I would have thought, what my estimate kind of was. But like, I think it just depends on what you're trying to do. For you, it was like, and you know, to your credit, also with SVG, I've found it's kind of the same thing that James has said. Like, it's hard to make SVG. You always sort of have kind of a flat look, and with you had clever ways of shading it and layering it to really give it the depth. I mean, it's a great artistic project. It looks great. It doesn't look
a lot borrowed a bit from Squiggly as well, which I think I said before, but yeah.
Yeah, so like with Squiggly, to me, it was literally, I was like, or just do like squiggly lines and they'll store them on chain and generate them on chain and build in some gamification to the minting process. And it was like the whole contract was sort of the art. And then the visual piece is just one element of it. And that was the way that I thought about it. And I think like with like burners, not that, I mean, it looks great, you know, in and of itself. And that's what most people care about. But I think that the cooler thing is that what it looks like is just a small element of what it actually is and why it's interesting and why it's neat. I'm saying with, you know, to me, I thought more people got that when I like did like Chainfaces. I thought that it was like, oh, everybody looks at it the same way I do, and they'll see the bigger picture.
An event. It was like an event. It was a happening.
It was supposed to be. But so many people just focus like, oh, it looks like that, and yeah, I don't really get it, and that's you know, lesson learned. You need to sort of hit both crowds if you really.
Matt Cain's gazers. You can. I mean, whenever I look at any of my gazers, they're different, right? They're never the same. I'm still trying to find the technology to have a wall of gazers. It's hard to find.
How many gazers do you have?
I think I have a dozen.
Oh, I'm jealous. So Matt helped me pick out mine, so I was very honored.
Oh man, I didn't have that. You guys, by the way, I mean, kind of on topic, you guys have any thoughts about his recent conceptual art on Super Rare, the AI Burning Bridges series, contractual obligations?
I mean, you know, so I look at it like if I was, and maybe I'm different than Matt would be, so I'm not saying this is what he did, but like for me, if somebody was like, you have to create a project by the end of the month, and let's say I've procrastinated all year and I just had to put something out, I probably would try to squeak by with some cheeky bullshit like that.
Did he not just launch a project a few weeks ago that it seemed like he might have worked on for like 10 months or so?
He may or may not have done that, and maybe he decided I can make some money out of this.
Totally the project we were going to get before something happened. I mean, I'm interested to see how it plays out. He's obviously has some messages he's trying to send here. You know, I don't think we've seen the final product. Maybe we have, but I don't think we've seen
every time somebody says that, it's the final product. I've heard it so many times.
I don't really care. I mean, I think it's really interesting what he did. I found out that Matt actually also purchased a rare pass around 30 Ether so himself. So he like put himself in the same boat. I'm not worried what old X copy is going to do before for his drop if he goes even more low rent than Matt.
I wouldn't be terribly surprised if he did. I mean, you have to realize like these guys look at the amount of effort they put into a good art work, if they are going to put in that amount of effort, just make themselves 1,000 ether instead of fulfilling some old bullshit to make some traders
apparently
happy.
they,
Like,
they were all doing it like for free, and then somehow like a small royalty percentage got into the mix. That was part of Matt's beef that I was picking up on in his spaces. Josie, did you have any thoughts or input? Are you keeping up on this situation at all?
On Matt's thing specifically, I messaged him. It was we didn't have a full conversation about it yet, but I just saw all the spaces going on about Matt and his work, and people on total opposite sides of like, okay, but the only person he's screwing over is the collector. People were like, well, how are the collectors screwed over? It's probably going to be the most valuable thing that they got.
I don't feel screwed over. I definitely felt surprised because I thought I was getting a Matt Cain, which to me meant something that was designed, that was developed on top of the algorithm and style and program that he's used. He's done for 10 years.
Storytelling that he's always done. Yeah, I'm excited to keep watching it. I feel like there's more gonna happen. I have zero idea. And if it ends,
I feel like I should be sending my ETH to like certain addresses and playing some game he's playing. But you know, as we were talking about before this call, like I'm a new dad, so I don't really have much time these days. So I like my NFTs that just change dynamically based on outside exterior events on chain.
Yeah, where you don't have to do anything. And yeah, I mean, I think
you know, by the way, actually, there's something you just said that I just want to bring up really quickly because Ben and I were talking about it the other day because we're exploring some fun things. And I was saying how when people have to do something like ongoing or come back to it and update it, like, you know, async layers, or I forget the other example I gave, it gets forgotten a lot. So there's like this.
And then if you miss the one thing, then there's no point in continuing the chain. That's like the other problem with all this too.
Right. And so there's this interesting, weird spot where I think there's an exciting moment to give people like an influence on the NFT in the beginning, but not make it mandatory for them to do things continuously, but still have their own input on it, where it feels really special, like they were a part of that process, but where it doesn't make the NFT so specific, like based off of an NFT in their wallet or something else that only they own, that it doesn't have any secondary interest, or it doesn't have any interest outside of like what it's like exactly paired to. So we were having some fun conversations around that.
And market dynamic on that too. Like often if you don't interact with the NFT when there's some action you're supposed to take, you're actually like losing value by not doing anything.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like
in gold, that's I did something similar to that, where basically so firstly collectors are encouraged to hodl for long periods of time. They keep it in the same wallet and then they can collect these new trades. But also I kind of assumed, exactly like you're saying, that most, you know, a lot of people will just kind of will sort of lose interest, and especially over, because these milestones are like at 6 months, a year, 2 years, 5 years, 10 years, 20 years. And so they get rarer, basically. People who are engaging, they create rarer pieces by staying engaged.
By staying, right. You get a reward for staying in. It doesn't sound like you're necessarily punishing people for not staying directly.
Not really, no, not really punishing anyone, no. But I mean, who knows how it will actually well, there is actually there's a marker, you know, if people don't pay their royalty, but other people can see, they actually see it in the art, you know. So that Artie, a friend of mine, Artie Hands, the collector, he was saying it's like the shame bell for NFTs. But I was you know, I think it's more subtle than that, but maybe it's the same. But
yeah, I mean, I kind of think the ideal is to have it be passive. Like with Chainface Arena was idle. You entered and you could leave at any time. But other than that, it was pretty much you check in the morning. Okay, I'm still alive, and now my guy has, you know, 0.1 ETH bounty. Do I want to take that and survive, or do I want to roll the dice again for another day? And I think like micro decisions like that are okay, but I personally, you know, I don't have the time or the desire to hit an NFT every single day and spend 15 or 20 minutes on it just to maintain its value. I'd rather just sell the shit and not think about it again. And that's the reality for most people, I think. Like heavy metal, when that came out, or I guess that's how you pronounce it. Like I played it for a few days and kind of enjoyed it, and then I was like, man, there's no fucking way that I'm going to continue to play this.
I'm sure I lost so much money there too, like by not playing it. I have like over 100 of those damn things. And
it's not World of Warcraft, you know what I mean? Like it's
it's probably like one of the worst gaming experiences I've ever had in my life. Now, on the other hand, like the Legends of the Mara one I'm also doing, that one's passive and it's easy. All I have to do is go click a box to harvest, and it's off chain since I've already done some on chain interactions. That's manageable and not bad. And it's a limited period of time. Kind of to your point of what you were saying, Josie, you have a period of time where you can have an impact, and then after that it kind of locks. I think, Yuga's experimenting. They're now a full-on gaming company, so we're going to see more experiments, I think, coming around. Yeah, that's one area where I think we've seen some bad examples with heavy metal where like literally if you don't do anything, like even starting with the sewer pass and stuff, you don't do anything, and that's extracted value from the main token itself. So it's like you were better off selling the Bored Ape than like playing this game at this point and going this whole length if you were just looking for value extraction.
Yeah, it's a job to just maintain your value when you could just sell it, and it actually creates pressure to get the fuck out unless you're like willing to devote all that time, and most people aren't. We're not. There are better games to play than any NFT game that's ever existed, obviously.
But I mean, is that where this goes with gaming? Are people ultimately spending their time grinding out something that's like marginally better than minimum wage in order to make
it'll be absolute dog shit money. Yeah, I mean, it'll always evolve. It'll devolve into.
You got the Franklin is boards, tweeting every time they make $3 off of an NFT sale. So people like that shit.
But isn't it? It's part of the environment in a way, like the it's the actual buying and selling and the speculation is part of the entertainment of NFTs, right? And there are a lot of projects where if you take that away, there's not really much left, right? I mean, not that I'm judging or anything, and I don't think it will go away either. I think it's just, like you think about it, as the NFT space gets bigger and the speculation in the marketplace is going to, the gamification of that part of it is going to just going to get more and more intense probably over time.
Yeah,
where would go away, right? And just
that, yeah, for sure.
The way I kind of see it is you'll always like most of the popular NFT games. Somebody mentioned Axie earlier. People just outsource it, and it's just a really convoluted way of staking, basically, is what it becomes, except now you have to do shit to get minimal earnings. And I don't think that there is, like, you don't build a game that's going to be popular that way. You have to build a good game, and the whole pay to earn or play to earn thing, I don't know that even exists. Like, maybe there's a scenario where I think there is a scenario where you could do something like in a fun game, and it does actually. So like Clash of Clans, for example, you play Clash of Clans for years, you get up to a town hall, whatever they're at now, and then you want to sell your account. There are people that will pay to skip the line. That absolutely is a thing.
WoW Gold, you can buy characters on WoW. I mean, there's no doubt that like pay to earn already exists or play to earn already exists. It's just a matter
but
of
it's about the game. It's not about
it's worth it in the Philippines to grind out some Axie Infinity. It's not necessarily worth it in the United States to grind out some Axie Infinity, right? There's a different standard of living there and all those sort of things. So maybe that's what blockchain gaming becomes. That's what I'm like getting towards here is like maybe that's what blockchain gaming becomes is like it's like the secondary form of income, but a very low level of income for a lot of people. Maybe that's like the lower end of the spectrum, and maybe the higher end of the spectrum is having something like Baldur's Gate 3 characters that could then work in some other Dungeons and Dragons themed like thing. I don't know.
I think there's different layers of this. Like I think you can have something that has its collectability and can stand on its own and not be an NFT that's specifically just made for this like short-term game, like the sewer pass thing. And then like when it's done, it's like worthless. I think there's
CyberBrokers, you're saying this.
Yeah, I think there's experiences you can build on that. If a collector wants to collect some really amazing art for whatever reason why they want to collect it, if it's on chain, if it's the artist, whatever they're into, can have that experience. But if people want to go deeper in, if they want to explore the story, they want to explore some gaming mechanism, it's not punishing to the people who just want to collect the art to collect the art, but there is this added value to other people who do want to experience that. So I think there are probably levels, but there have been a lot of NFTs that have released with this promise of some big gaming thing that are obviously fallen flat, and we haven't had like the most amazing success yet in Web3 with games. Even projects.
I always thought the NFTs themselves made great assets for games, and then other people could come along and create gaming experiences that would encourage.
But that hasn't really happened.
Why would they do that though? Like, why would that happen?
Then you don't have to go through the creation of the assets. They already
creating
exist.
the assets is fucking. That's the easy part.
It's not easy.
Yeah.
It's all of a sudden easier because of AI, perhaps, but like that wasn't the case.
No, it's fucking easy as shit. There's so many
I
low
think
effort.
really good assets is the hardest part, and then like the gaming part is the other hard part. And like when you just separate the two, you can make really great assets and a really great game and combine those two. Versus like having both.
Making the game is the hard part. Making an NFT basic adjective animal project is so fucking easy. Anybody can do it. Like it's really that fucking easy. It's not to discredit anything that we have done as NFT creators, because our NFTs are good, but like most of them. I'm just saying, like there were a shitload of projects came out in 2021 by people that had some project management skills. They knew how to find an artist. They knew how to hire a smart contract developer. They threw some shit together in a couple weeks and they made millions of dollars. If you're a game creator and you can make the next World of Warcraft, you should not buy to use other people's assets, integrate it. Just make your own fucking thing.
No,
like if you
this
like,
is a world
why?
where like I have assets like my Avastar that I want to use in any gaming experience that I go into, and I have the ability to take that in there. And then there's all of these really high fidelity assets. I mean, it's the Ready Player One scenario. Like that's not like a unique and stupid idea that just I thought of. It was in like Spielberg.
I think that idea works.
Sorry,
I don't know who I interrupted.
No, go ahead.
Are you guys aware of the Reddit avatars on Polygon? And like they sold like, what is it, 20, 30 million of people bought them, and they're using them on Reddit, and there's like a pretty big secondary market, and it doesn't get talked about at all, right? But it's like they basically, I was kind of looking at it and kind of going, well, so Reddit just won at PFPs, right? And
they just called them digital collectibles. They didn't call them NFTs, but
they call them digital collectibles. Yeah. But I just
thought, I mean, yeah, that's adoption, right? Like whether or not that leads to them being used in games or not. Maybe Nate's point's right. Maybe no one wants to do it.
It's way harder to do that. I mean, okay, you would still build your own assets. It's like if I needed to build a game that would integrate CyberBrokers and Chainfaces and Avastars and Bored Apes, that is way fucking harder to do than just build the game and introduce my own assets.
But not if there's a standard that everybody's following for those assets.
So, I mean, if you're going to all build 3D models and we're all going to standardize, but we're not even close to that. It's okay. Here's actually a good counterexample. Loot was mentioned earlier, and when it came out, I said that's cool. I think it's funny, like the super low effort but like creative idea like that. And then people they ran wild with it. They're like, oh man, so many people they're gonna integrate their games into Loot. Like, no, the fuck they're not. Why would they do that?
And that sucks because it was an on-chain project and it's cool, and we should have been celebrating the fact that it was an on-chain thing. But like, yeah, the market got way too excited about some dumb shit that's in
which they always do
already.
But why would somebody integrate with that instead of just make their own random text generator? If they're going to build the whole game, they're going to do the hard part.
You're saying that
and split money.
Everything. It's not just the text generator. Then. Like, why would someone want to hack the Bored Ape community and use their avatars and gets a collector who has tens of thousands of dollars in disposable income to come on their platform and use their Bored Ape?
I get what you're saying, but also, okay, if you can build the awesome game and you need users, and Bored Apes is going to bring you in millions of users,
next thing, right? It's not like how you foundationally build the game. Like Fortnite adding in Bored Apes versus building a game where you first have Bored Apes and bring your fucking NFTs with you, right?
Exactly. You wouldn't build Fortnite with no characters and then go around partnering with cool cats and fucking like that wouldn't make any sense. That would actually be the worst. Nobody would invest in that. You could never get that off the ground. That's a shit idea.
Yeah,
building an awesome.
The crowd is saying Trizlet said you're talking about a standard that others could follow to allow an asset to work the same across the board, not building a game around one NFT collection. Then everyone in the chat is saying VRM, VRM, VRM. So maybe we'll have our next fun chat will be on VRMs, maybe.
Avastars have VRMs now.
Yeah.
They're not fully on chain. They're on
There's-
IPS.
There's so many nuances with the VRMs that I feel like we're just going to have a whole different argument.
Yes, there are, right? Because I think even Meebits came out and they're like basically like VRMs, but apparently they were like total absolute shit in every way possible. But they were VRMs. I guess that's like the on-chain conversation that we
again, when we start talking about the amount of effort that the creators are putting into the product before they release it, like there are ways to test these things. There are ways to make things better, and there's a lot of stuff that, you know, even on the CyberBrokers team that we're doing behind the scenes for Mex, for next projects that we have coming up, that is like testing the shit out of all of this. And we're having to like make up some things as we go, because there's not standards for attachables, for weapons, for like all of these things, but there's all these worlds that we can go into. So it's still at the beginning, but I've always like had the firm belief that even though it's not ready there yet, let's just still go for it. And we can like trim some things later on and fix things up, but like it shouldn't stop us from doing it. So it's definitely a fun conversation we could have.
I love that attitude, because I think of it, it's the same way as doing on-chain NFTs, to circle it back in 2020 or whatever, because you just couldn't do it. Like you had to figure out how to do it. You had to sort of build the stepping stones. The only reason that, you know, we ever got to having on-chain NFTs be a thing that people kind of know about and care about now is because there were those sort of stepping stones on the way there. And I mean, it's not like a straightforward, easy path, this standardization of building a game building asset, I guess. Like to me, you know, and I was saying earlier, one is way harder than the other. And the way that I know that that's so fucking obvious is thousands of NFTs came in and said they were going to build good games, and none of them did it.
And
so
they,
it's
by the
pretty
way,
clear which one is harder to do.
They all got tens and tens of millions of dollars of funding to build, not all of them, but a lot of them either crowdsourced through NFTs they sold or through investments, because I know a ton of the people that deployed capital, the funds that deployed capital, are totally out of luck because none of those games ever launched, but they invested multiple millions of them. So it's interesting.
Yeah, I mean,
I'm looking forward to whatever Nate has out next. I don't think it'll be a game. It'll probably be art, though.
It will be art, and it'll be gamified, and it'll be different. I mean, that's really all I can say about it. You know, it just
Is that
there an it yet? Does it exist?
Tweets.
Or are you still like kicking around many ideas? Sorry, Dave.
Oh, no, I'm saying, well, actually we have 10 minutes, so we should go around and say, if there's anything you want to share, please do share. Nate, I saw you keep some cool little comment the other day. So
for me, like my creative process is to just be juggling multiple things at the same time and just push them all a little bit at a time, and then try to figure out which one is kind of the thing. So like even when Chainface Arena came out, it wasn't the project that I'd been working on. Like I was working on a project called Adjective Animals, and it was, you know, tongue in cheek. And it was like this creative, it was basically, the idea was to get to an all one of one art project. Like every asset in the collection was one of one, individually drawn by a different artist. And there was this whole bounty system. It was this really complicated system, but I basically stopped that and then finished Chainfaces Arena, which was a different idea. It wasn't supposed to be that way. But anyways, my point is I have like 5 projects that I'm kind of messing around with, and I don't know which one will be the one, and maybe it won't be any of them. Maybe it will be a different idea that kind of takes pieces from each of them. But the most important part about it to me is like it needs to take these elements of the blockchain that so many people kind of take for granted and leave out. I know with the Arena, a lot of people told me, I didn't even know you could do this kind of stuff. I didn't know that an NFT could do this. And I was like, that's exactly what I was hoping for. The next project will introduce something that people were like, I didn't know you could do this. It will be dynamic. It will be most likely on chain, although, you know, experiments there, it just depends. But it won't be like an animal on a token. Like I promise that it won't be that.
All right. We have a lot to look forward to. And like you said, it may be none of those things, or you may combine a couple of those ideas or do multiple. So I'm excited to hear that you're experimenting. Jimmy, do you have anything you want to share? It's fine if not.
No, I don't have anything to go over right now. It's been really nice talking to you guys today about all this stuff. Enjoyed it.
It is nice. People were asking, when's episode 2? We need to get this crew together again.
I'm happy to do it whenever you guys are.
Yeah, no, this is fun. James, do you have anything you want to share that you are working on?
Oh, I'm actually building some machines to be able to make some art, like some physical art. So I have some ideas about making these pieces, but I have to build a machine to be able to make it, which is like, it's kind of a bit of a head fuck actually, to be honest. But it's all right. I'm getting there. I am gradually.
That's awesome.
Gradually getting there. Yeah.
Building machines for physical art sounds pretty fucking cool. I cannot wait to see what you create with that. Ben, I mean, we can't share a ton, but Ben and I are cooking on hopefully something fun, both within CyberBrokers and outside of CyberBrokers. We have, with CyberBrokers team, we have a ton coming up, obviously, with the game that we've been working on. And then we also have some fun things next year that will go into all of the topics of everyone shouting VRMs, some fun things there that are very different from what we've done before that we're excited about. So yeah, I don't know. Ben, if you want to say anything else.
I think you've said everything I'm allowed to say.
Okay.
I think I want to leave everyone with one final comment. Look at the gas price on Ethereum right now and see how it's 6 Gwei. We have not had this blessing in almost 4 years.
Yep.
If you're a developer and you want to do something awesome on chain, this is your time to do it.
I love that.
That is a great point. I spent about $400,000 running the arena. That's how expensive it was to do the auto indexing bot that killed the NFT and then transported it to the graveyard contract.
Yeah, including the tax as well.
Do you know what Gwei was at?
No, I got to. It was about it was a little over 100. I had estimated that it was going to cost me like 250,000, and I'm like, it's part of the performance. It's worth it. It's going to be cool. And then whenever gas it launched in that early January, it just was high. It was in the 100. There was like an early block where I think I spent like, it was like $4,000 or $5,000 on one block, and I was like, oh my god, I'm gonna go fucking broke. Like, this is gonna be hitting me. But that was just kind of an exceptional block where it ended up being like 500 gas or 500 Gwei. But yeah, it is a good time to experiment in these sort of bear markets with like Squiggly WTF, which I launched in 2020. Gas was a lot lower, and it was like a total clusterfuck where people had to. It wasn't me wasting money; it was them that had to waste to compete. But that probably wasted, I don't know, 50 ether. It was pretty chaotic. But it wasn't 500 ether. It wasn't, whatever.
Wasn't as bad as it could have been. Ben, do you know what Gwei was at when we launched CyberBrokers?
Yeah, that was a fun one because we had 2,000 transactions that had to go on chain to put all the data up there. So I wrote a script that would actually check, see what was uploaded, what wasn't. It ran overnight. It was like the worst night's sleep I ever had in my life. But oh god, the cat is now trying to change the configuration of our restream. But no, it was. I think I had a limiter in there where it would not deploy a transaction if it was over 35 Gwei. So I think we were like averaging 20 to 25 then. If we were to do it at 6 now, holy crap, that would have been.
I think ours was 4 for Avastars, and that was high. We had like run our simulations around 2.
Yeah, I remember it was like 1 to 3, like all of 2019.
It was really cheap in this.
Yeah, I want to
do about 500 traits or so.
I was going to say, I want to ask, do you remember how cheap it was to put Avastars on chain? Because
it was like less than $2,000, I think. Overall.
I read that.
Yeah. And that brings me to a kind of a different idea. I wish we had done it with Avastars and Cliff, who did a great job designing and developing the smart contracts. I didn't win this battle. I wish that something like Avastar traits existed on chain in a smart contract that was CCO that anybody could use to then go and create their own stuff. And then the art itself is already on chain, and then you just kind of assemble it into whatever you want. It would have to be a pretty broad collection of things so that everything didn't look the same. But I think that would be a really cool expression of the CCO, and then also giving a canvas to people who, when gas is at 200, could use these assets instead and figure out a way to mint those without an additional cost, because you're just rendering what's already on chain. Anyways, just kind of an aside, something that I'd love to see happen one day. I'm not going to take any action to do it. Hopefully someone does.
Cool. And I like that idea. And I want to say one last, okay. How do you say, Jimmy, you're going to laugh at me because I always say their name differently in my head. Kwig Bell? What is their actual?
Quig Bell.
Quig Bell? Is that what you
Quig
say?
Bell.
I always
Quig
say Quig Bell
He's
said,
incredible.
rather be too early and innovative than boring. And I really like that. And that's a really fun thing that I think we hit on multiple times. And that Ben, his little shout out about how low prices are now. If you guys have ideas, go play around with them. Go do those things. I don't know if any of you guys want to say anything closing, but I'm super, super thankful for everyone listening in and putting their comments and questions. And I'm thankful for Nate, Ben, Jimmy, and James for all hanging on here and talking about on-chain and games and shit talking some other projects. So that was a blast. So thank you guys.
Yeah, thanks.
Thank you. Thank everybody else who came and listened to us too.
Yeah, for sure. Okay.
Amazing.
We'll see you hopefully on episode 2. We'll figure out what that looks like. We'll poll for the next topics. But thank you guys. We'll see you all soon.